AI. And welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. We're just getting set up. Give us a minute. Really appreciative of your time and attending this conversation, which is really aimed to be a debrief of the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. This is a mixed space, no, of those both who were present, those who were not able to participate but may have monitored from afar, and of course, anyone who wasn't engaged in the session at all and is here to learn about the outcomes and some of the analysis of what took place in the space. So welcome to everyone. There will be room for discussion, and we really have sort of an open format today where instead of being a lot of content heavy, we'll just be hearing from members that made up the delegation of MenEngage this year, which was roughly around 50 participants from the Alliance that were able to travel to New York and participate in the session. So once again, welcome. I'm just seeing the time. Maybe we'll wait one more minute for colleagues to trickle in. And as we're doing that, perhaps just a bit of the housekeeping. If you do require translation today, it will be done by AI Companion. So make sure to click at the bottom of your screen. And Coram, pardon, maybe you can support me with this. It is the button AI Companion.
Yeah, if you see a globe at the bottom of the screen, that should be the sharing option. So the AI companion is not just taking notes, but the globe at the bottom, if you click on that, you will be able to set your preferred language. You need to select the language that you are one speaking in, also the language that you are going to be, you want the translation in as well.
Thank you so much. And I'm seeing it on my screen. You have to click more options on the bottom right-hand corner, and then you'll see the globe with the interpretation. Let us know in the chat if you're having any issues with adjusting your translation settings. Wonderful. Maybe let's move to the next screen and welcome. We have a few more people trickle in. We're just getting started. Welcome to our CSW debrief. And just a quick note on our participation guidelines. As with all spaces, we just seek to foster a safe, inclusive, and respectful space, and really hope to achieve like a positive learning outcome and for us to engage together as MenEngage members. So please be respectful, take responsibility for what you share, be inclusive, and just follow online rules of friendliness. Thank you so much in advance. Next screen. And would you mind just sharing in the chat box your name, where you're joining us from, the organization you work for, and what do you hope to learn today? Although also would be curious if you participated in CSW. So maybe you can share that as we're moving through the introductory remarks. And next slide. Great. So maybe we can go ahead and get started. So today we'll really break down the agenda into two sections, and we really aim to have quite a participatory discussion. Also open to all of your questions in case you were not at CSW, and we're providing a bit of a recap and analysis, but you have further questions. We're really looking to have a dynamic discussion today. And we'll be recapping CSW69 in two sections. And the first one will be quite broad, no? What happened at CSW69? What was negotiated? There were several documents negotiated. What was our analysis as participants of MenEngage at CSW69 of the political context in which CSW was held? Checking in on some of the opposition monitoring, which is the regressive actors that are operating at CSW. This includes civil society organizations, religious organizations, and also governments, no? And what some of them were up to, and then some of the other discussions that took place from broader feminist, LGBTIQ, and youth movements. So having said that, maybe next slide. That will be our first section, and in the second one, we'll address men and masculinities at CSW. So in this first 20-minute space, we just really want to open up to begin to crowdsource some analysis and insights from the general space of CSW, which of course, as you all know, remains perhaps the most critical United Nations session, as it's exclusively dedicated to the address of the advancement of women's rights. This year was quite particularly important because it was a review year, which meant that it was reviewing 30 years since the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. That made this year a bit unique. Usually CSW, as most of you know, is addressing a particular thematic area of focus, a priority area, as well as a review area, which was the priority area 3-4 years back. So it loops back around for us to assess progress that we've been making. This year, however, was again a review year for 30 years since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. So that was the main thematic focus this year. And there's so much more to share, but I'll pause there. And maybe I can open up the conversation by inviting a few colleagues who were present at CSW to begin leading us in a conversation about our general analysis and recap of the session. Kisa, can I invite you to go first?
Yes, you can. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today. I don't have much um, in terms of updates, but just want to share the coordination. I was invited to participate to represent the alliance in my capacity as the co-chair, and I remember the first thing I was thinking about is just how hectic it's going to be, because I know the last time I participated, there was a lot of meetings. And since it was my first time, I really strained myself in terms of going to as many sessions as possible. But this time, I'm glad that with the secretariat, we identified the priority areas that were of importance for us, and that's why we ended participating in those areas. So not only was it a learning moment for me, but it was also a very important period to know what exactly the work that the Alliance does at global level in terms of engaging permanent missions, engaging policymakers, and the work that our partners are doing in different parts of the world. For the first time, I had access to the grounds pass, so I took part in UN in conversations happening in the main UN hall. We had conversations around men and masculinities, inclusion, working with men and boys. I attended sessions with parliamentarians for gender, with male politicians as allies for gender equality, and lastly, I delivered a statement on behalf of the MenEngage partners on which day was that? On the day when that was open for submission, which was a Monday. So it was a very important space. I think it really tied in what works at local, regional, and global, and just for me to get a chance just to experience firsthand how the work that we do really contributes to the global space. The other thing that I noticed or rather I appreciated was just the work the secretary does in coordinating all these, because I noticed all these sessions do not happen by chance. There's a lot of coordination and a lot of planning that goes behind these sessions. So I really appreciate that for you to be invited, for you to actually go to rooms that people have prepared, and for sessions. I really appreciate that. And also the MenEngage partners who take a lot of their time to prepare materials, to prepare platforms, and to create spaces for young people to engage, for men to share work as with men and boys. I thought that was just very appreciative. And yeah, I don't think I've forgotten anything, but yes, I left CSW encouraged. I left the space feeling that motivated that the work still needs to go on. And I absolutely loved the activist space that you have created for us to uh, revitalize and to encourage each other to keep on with the work as much as the world is on its head in terms of funding, and in terms of gender equality, and in terms of just the many things that are going on. Just being in a space with fellow activists to convene, to commune, and to share about our work really inspired me, and looking forward to um, continuing the work at home back in Kenya, and communing with other colleagues even after CSW. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much for giving us a bit of an insight too about the experience, of participating at CSW, how multi-pronged it is, how many different things we end up engaging in when we're there, and utilizing our time, in a way that, just yields outcomes for the rest of the year with relationship building and joining panels with each other. Thank you very much. I'm thinking maybe Mepiwa, thanks for joining. Do you want to share a little bit with us about your analysis of the session in general, the context in which it took place, which we know was, of course, in the US under the Trump administration, with some challenges, even in the lead up to CSW, with potential restrictions for visas, and access of activists flying into the session. Mapiwa, over to you, but really for an open share, whatever is coming to mind. I am seeing in the chat that we do have some colleagues here who were not able to attend. So just thank you, for sharing that information, and for us to keep that in mind as we're contributing. Mapiwa, can you hear us?
Afternoon. Yes, thank you, Jenny. Afternoon to some of those where it's afternoon, and good morning to others where it's still morning. I am struggling a bit with my connection, so do let me know whenever you can't hear me. For some reason, it's a bit unstable. But yes, just to give my own reflections, like what Jenny has said, this CSW happened. It was a bit of a unique CSW in that we're not specifically reflecting on one theme. We're looking at a major milestone reflecting on the Beijing platform for action. And this CSW happened against a backdrop where we're experiencing serious pushbacks in terms of, in the geopolitical space. We are really seeing some serious pushbacks to women's rights, to rights. The human rights movement is under attack. Women's rights movement are under attack. We are seeing, especially when you also look at how the Trump administration, it came in and has also made decisions that also seem to have a heavy impact in terms of the progress that we have made in the space. So there was that tone and that recognition that in as much as we are a series of events that I attended, while it was great that there was an opportunity to really reflect on, let me see if I can turn on my video, but I'm not sure if the moment you can't hear me properly, just let me know, because yes. So I was just saying that we are experiencing like a number of activities that I attended. There was that acknowledgement that we are really in a space where we are experiencing some major pushbacks, and we also need to reorganize ourselves and rethink in terms of how do we also respond to the pushbacks on women's rights, on gender equality, on sexual and reproductive health rights, on diversities, a series of so that was something that many of the events that I attended and participated in, there was that acknowledgement that, and also there was the acknowledgement though that we are not where we were 30 years back. There's been some milestones that have been achieved in terms of working towards progressive recognition of women's rights, working towards gender equality. But so, for instance, I remember in one meeting, I think that was Nyaratsai Kumbonjanda who was speaking and saying, look, we are not where we were. The things 30 years back, even this space wasn't as open as it used to be. But then having said that, we are not where we want to be. We are still not where we had envisaged when the declaration was made. We are not where we had envisaged we would be now, and we are now experiencing new forms of various forms of pushback, use of technology and etc., which also emphasizes the need for us to also strengthen our own, like strengthen our movement building. You know, we need to strengthen our movement building because we also need to have strong movements that can be able to withstand the pushbacks that we're experiencing globally. It's not even in one country, it's across the globe. We are seeing that a number of especially also within the space where we are working in a space what is dependent on donor funding and all, we are experiencing a lot of regression. And so we also need to be thinking about how do we reorganize ourselves to address this regression. But overall, there was that acknowledgement in a number of events that we have made some progress, and we still have some challenges, and we need to think beyond to figure out how we deal with this. And also there was conversations around engaging with men and boys, working with men and boys. And I was also looking at the event that we hosted together in collaboration with MenEngage, MenEngage Africa, MenEngage Global, and looking at boys as agents of change to feminism and tracking barriers to solidarity, and talking about the need for transparent and accountable leadership and accountable engagement, the need to really address the structural barriers, you know, the systematic and structural barriers that continue to perpetuate inequality, that continue to perpetuate the violations that we are seeing that are manifesting in various forms. So there's that need for solidarity, that need for movement building, that need for engaging and addressing structural challenges and structural barriers, and working collaboratively with other movements, with other women's rights organizations. So it was the mood was really about acknowledging what the challenges we're facing, but also making room to take a moment and reflect on what milestones have been made and what opportunities remain. And it was also a good thing that in spite of some of the gaps that were there, that the leaders started by making a political declaration on the very first day of CSW 69. A political declaration was made around reiterating the need to address women's rights, to address gender equality, need for more commitment, and so forth, and also an acknowledgement of the challenges that we are still facing. So maybe I can just pause here for now.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful, Mapiwa, just giving us a sense of the political context, and also the discussions, within that space of both a reflection on progress and gaps, and the realization of the Beijing Declaration, and also the forward-looking strategic thinking, of what's needed to achieve its full implementation and realization. So thank you very much for that. I'm just thinking, and maybe for the next section, we have a few colleagues here who will be able to share Dog, and I'm seeing Mark too, if you're willing to jump in and contribute. But maybe here, let's go back to the slides. Just for a quick recap of just technically some of what unfolded. I'm about to share this with you in the chat, so there's no need to take notes. You'll have the presentation on hand. Pardon me 1 second. Here you go. And so just quickly, yeah, there was around 5,000 participants, over 100 ministers. There's always hundreds of side events that take place, almost 300 this year, and 500 parallel events, which are the ones led by civil society. Side events are the ones led by governments and UN agencies. So it's always just an incredibly busy time, with a lot of important conversations taking place. Next slide. And as Mapiwa was alluding to, there's always a negotiated document at CSW, and this year, curiously, we had 3. Usually it's agreed conclusions is the name of the adopted document at the end of the session, but whenever we enter a review year, which happens, I'm sure you remember Beijing plus 25, Beijing plus 20. We go in 5-year increments of reviewing, the declaration and progress in its implementation. Any year that is a review is a political declaration as the outcome document. So that was one of the main negotiations. There was also a really important negotiation taking place that continues still on CSW revitalization, which in simple terms means that they're looking to revitalize CSW, to transform it, and to really analyze its function, its purpose, and how it's organized, in terms of what is brought forward, its topics within that space, how civil society contributes or has not been able to fully, what is the aim of CSW and its mechanisms. So right now we're in the middle of that negotiation taking place. So it's incredibly important for all of us in the field of gender justice, because CSW, as we mentioned at the top of the meeting, is still the most important space within the United Nations for the work that we do in gender justice. So we'll share a little more information later of how you can continue to be involved in that process and how we have been. And also the multi-year program of work was negotiated, which basically lays out the themes that will be addressed at CSW in the next 5 years. And that always surprisingly is a very contentious issue where governments have quite an intense battle to either include or remove themes because of their political nature. So it sounds simple, but it's actually quite challenging, as we saw this year. Next slide. Okay, and very quickly on the language. So what was achieved in the negotiation of the political declaration by feminist advocates who were pushing hard for progress on the normative framework, and we worked alongside them to support in this. As Mapiwa shared, even though it was a very difficult negotiation, a political declaration was adopted by consensus. So in some ways, that continues to be a reaffirmation that gender equality is important to the multilateral community. We were wondering at some points if we would even get an adopted document. And that it also reaffirmed that we need to strengthen CSW, We need to revitalize it, so support for the fact that that process needs to move forward. And really importantly, for the CARE feminist agenda, there was a recognition of the 5R framework, which is the recognition, representation, remuneration, reward, and redistribution of care. And it also was the first time a political declaration mentioned gender-based violence. CSW outcome documents have, but not a political declaration, which is much shorter, very succinct text. It's only a couple pages. The outcome documents of CSW are usually 6-7 pages. So this is a text that's very, very specific and is just trying to reiterate ongoing commitment to the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action. So that was actually quite a success. And also the recognition of digital gender-based violence, which, as we know, is an increasing topic of importance and concern. Next slide. And unfortunately, as we continue to see year after year, an intense battle took place over the inclusion of language on SRHR, also a failure to recognize girls' participation, the need for it, stagnation on language on climate change, and also failure to include comprehensive sexuality education, the need to protect women human rights defenders, and the inclusion of gender transformative approaches. Unfortunately, these are standard battle lines, shall we say, in negotiations year after year, and this year was no exception. Next slide. And then really quickly, as I mentioned, the multi-year program of work set up the negotiation to assess what we would have as the priority themes over the next few years. And just quickly going through it, next year will be focused on access to justice for all women and girls. The year after that will be dedicated to addressing Agenda 2030. As we know, SDG 5 specifically deals with gender equality. So where are we? An assessment. How do we continue to move towards the achievement of all the goals within SDG 5 and beyond, of the Sustainable Development Goals? 2028 will be care and support systems, and 2029 will be on humanitarian emergencies, which was a contentious topic as some governments wanted it to be on more broadly, women, peace, and security agenda, which was negotiated down to just humanitarian emergencies. So that one was quite contentious. Next slide. And as I mentioned, the CSW revitalization negotiations are ongoing. So if you're interested in taking part in what that process would entail, we actually already submitted our joint statements for the current step that we're in, which is that the negotiators, governments leading the negotiations, are beginning to compile inputs from civil society and drafting a paper of how they would envision CSW to be revitalized based upon all those inputs. And this is a really important step that civil society gets to speak up and share their thoughts, because part of what happened at CSW was a multilateral high-level plenary where member states delivered their opinions, and maybe some of the colleagues who participated in those can share their thoughts. And the ideas that member states are putting forward about how we would envision making CSW better are really falling short of the transformative potential that this moment has, and the feminist agendas, that are being brought forward about what we expect to see in order to make this space work better for the achievement of women's rights and gender justice more broadly. So there's a big gap between those who are tasked with leading this negotiation and the bar that they're setting being quite low. Next slide. And I'm just looking at time, maybe in terms of opposition monitoring. I'm going to share a link with you in the chat, which is the comprehensive opposition monitoring report from one of the main feminist organizations who looks at opposition monitoring at CSW, and they review all of the organizations that are regressive, all the member states, their online activity, their events that they organize, any statements that they deliver, and they really do a roundup of how intense the backlash was at CSW from year to year. And just to share that overall, in brief summary, they assessed that this was a very intense year for backlash. And at the same time, that a lot of the backlash actors felt quite emboldened this year, particularly because they were operating under the context of a Trump administration that fundamentally was in full alignment, with their political positionings. So there was a sense of political support and backing, for their work within the space. So just that being problematic. Also, we saw the Trump administration the U.S., no, shall we say, under the Trump administration, really seeking to derail the negotiations, even though they're not an official member of the CSW Bureau. They were still trying to sort of throw up, a lot of barriers to progress, especially on issues of diversity, and working through Argentina as a proxy government that's part of the commission to deliver this backlash agenda for them. Next slide. And this is from our colleague Doug, who's on our call today. Maybe do you want to share a little bit about this? You participated, in several of the government conversations as part of the delegation, and feeling frustrated, by witnessing the backlash and how it plays out live. Looking forward to your thoughts, Doug. Maybe you can share your reflections with us.
Yeah, what else shall I say? It was frustrating. So, but on the top you see the red heart. There was also some wonderful statements from other states, but I didn't find the right pictures, so I focused on the enemies. And yeah, it was a little bit exhausting to listen to all this always repeated same pictures of motherhood, of families in a really, really, really narrow conservative way, and that there was no space to get in contact between the different sides on the gender issue, because I think there are many points that are really crucial and critical, and we can talk about and discuss it, but there's no room for an open discussion, and that was really annoying and frustrating to see that they are building some closed boxes, confronting each other, and feels like a frozen war somehow, and that was really a bitter situation. And I think it's so I've been joining the CSW first time in 2019, and since then I think it's really much harder and stricter and better organized from the pro-family side, and the religious leaders on the conservative corner are fighting really with hard bondages against everything that is progressive and pro-feminist or feminist. And so, yeah, it's really frustrating. So this is one of the many pictures I draw there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just shared that article about the roundup of the opposition monitoring by colleagues at IPAS. They're an organization that really specializes on monitoring the scope and the impact of backlash actors in various contexts, including the United Nations. I really recommend, taking some time to scan through that, just to get a sense of the scope, and the multi-pronged strategies that are utilized. Thank you so much, Doug, for sharing. I'm going to pause really quick before we move on to our second section for today, which is a bit of a deep dive on how men and masculinities were addressed within the session. Just to see, does anyone have any questions about just the broader CSW and what took place? And just feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand if you have a question. Great. We'll move forward then. If anything comes up, then please do raise your hand at any point. And of course, as you know, we're MenEngage Alliance. We participated under many aims of movement building, participating in advocacy within the session, and always, of course, meeting each other, linking and connecting as MenEngage members within CSW. And always with the aim to support with the advancement of a progressive lens, no, of men and masculinities within CSW. I believe some of you know on this call and many more joined our pre-CSW strategy call, which we begin the year before CSW. So we begin organizing for the session around 6 to 8 months in advance. That's how much preparation really it takes, no, for us to then arrive at CSW and try to be of some impact and influence within the deliberations. So I thought that maybe for this section, no, we can also hear from colleagues and then begin to nuance a bit about the spaces that we were in that held conversations about engaging men and boys, any times that came up within the official deliberations, just a bit of a recap of some of the work of MenEngage Alliance at CSW. And then we'll wrap up with a bit of strategizing for next year. I think that's an important step too for us to just reflect on how did we do this year and how can we be better for next year, and to put those lessons learned into effect, no, as we move into the preparations for CSW 70. Okay, I'll pause there, and again, we open up the space, and Doug, sorry to go back to you, but you were part of the delegation this year, and I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about that experience, and maybe also could you share with colleagues how would someone go about inquiring if they could be a part of their delegation? No, what does that mean? What did it give you access to, and just a bit of your overall reflections on that process?
Mm-hmm. I give my very best. So I prepared some words because it's not so easy to bring it on point in short of time we have. Yeah, but I think we have to zoom a little bit out of the CSW because it's part of the UN system at all. We cannot look at the CSW in isolation. It's part of the UN system as a whole, and for this reason, the threat of collapsing multilateralism must be taken very seriously, because if we share the news, and the US actually has announced that it no longer wants to fund the UN, we have a real funding problem, because the US is funding about a fifth, and yeah, if we have a lack of a fifth of the budget, so what are we doing with the UN at all, and what is it meaning to CSW? Is it the first thing to kick off and say, okay, let's save some money, and is the aim on women's right probably the first thing? And is it because of that a little bit dangerous to talk about rotation, the CSW from New York to wherever in the world? Is the end the beginning of the end, maybe? So let's talk about that a little bit later. And I think this real politic outlook for the future is not just talking about high politics in an abstract way. It's concretely and directly about hegemonic masculinity, because we are talking about the battle of supremacy between political leaders such as Xi, Putin, Modi, or Trump. They are all in the room without being in the room, and they have their diplomatic representatives there, and they are closing the spaces, and they use language we don't need any longer because it's not progressive. And from an European point of view, we are really aware there's neo-colonial and neo-imperialist forces that we can see going forward and make the rooms closer to weaker positions in the negotiations. So it's really hard to be part of that. On the negotiations floor at the CSW, it is repeatedly emphasized that the policy fields must be kept strictly separate. And what do I mean? Women's rights are not human rights. It's so many times I heard that. Armed conflicts are not humanitarian crisis. It's so many times I heard this. It said it's not part of the CSW, it's part of the Security Council. So what are we talking about? So it's so heavy to bear this viewpoints of so many really powerful actors on the negotiation that I was part of. So what can we do? It's in my point of view, it's a structurally patriarchal what we are seeing there, and they do not talk about masculinity, but the way they are doing their policy, it's completely in an old form, in an old-fashioned way of masculinity. So we really have to find strategies how to fight that back without naming what it's all about. It's about traditional masculinities and to regain them and to push back all women's rights. And maybe it's the most effectful strategy of the opposition is to exaggerate motherhood. Mothers are going to be socially encapsulated. The role of mother is elevated to the central role for girls and women. But the same, it means women as mothers have to be protected. And who is the one in the picture who is the protector? It's a strong man. And this picture is coming from the back door. And nobody is saying that. But if you're sitting there and listen to all that, what is told there in the room, it's all about strength and power, and at last or at least it's about violence, and nobody's talking about it clearly, but it's also present if you're a little bit aware of what in the next step is already told by all that the political discussions are about on the long term. So yes, it was really a little bit frustrating to see that, because I felt that the progressives are really powerful and the powerless, and the conservative backlashers can sit back, smile, and can see what's happening, and it's no dangerous at all for them and their positions. And from a German perspective, it's really hard to see that we are part of the European group, and that the European group is split up internally. And that's the reason for really weak positions and really weak fighting for progressive language, because it's internally not clear what we want. And we know that Hungary, that parts of Poland, that the right-wing led countries are really not really helpful, to say it diplomatically. Yeah, probably I stop here for the moment, and I'm really interested to hear what you have brought with you.
Doug, thank you so much. Such excellent points, no? Just bringing forward this central analysis that masculinities are deeply implicated in the rising backlash. In a sense, masculinities are what are mobilized and weaponized as the cultural political logic of anti-rights movements, and that they are particularly positioning feminist movements, LGBTIQ movements, immigrants as part of threats to this patriarchal notion of the nation, right? Of the authoritarian political leader that's in a manly way seeking to defend and protect from these threats to right, this idealized notion of the patriarchal power structure. And so in some ways, even if masculinities is not being said, it's the underlying, right, tension and impetus for what these regressive actors are doing within the space, or mobilizing around. It's such a great point. And just to acknowledge as well that as part of the delegation, DOG has been participating for several years inside the negotiations. And for anyone who's never been to CSW, I think it's just such a shocking moment to see and hear inside of a negotiation, not just member states that are putting forward a regressive argument as to why we shouldn't progress women's rights, but how coordinated they are. And that's the point, no? The progressive allied governments are in some ways failing to be as coordinated and effective at coming together and developing strategies within a multilateral negotiation to make the case for why we have to not just hold the line. We were trying to hold the line on Beijing, which was adopted 30 years ago, right? We're not just not progressing, we're holding the line, and our progressive allies are not employing tactics that are as strategic and as effective as backlash actors who have a multiplicity of ways that they come together and seek to disrupt the negotiations and make arguments as to why we shouldn't advance SRHR or LGBTIQ rights, right? So it's very worrisome and problematic. Thanks for all that analysis, Dag. I'm just thinking, Mark, I don't know if you want to jump in, not necessarily on this point, but as having led to a discussion on men and masculinities within CSW, that was really well attended, or any other reflections that you may have. And not to put you on the spot, just knowing since you were there. It sounds good. And anybody else, Mapiwa, I don't know if you want to jump in here, or Kisa?
Jenny, is somebody in the position to unmute Mark? Oh, okay, he done it.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying like you couldn't do it. Not that we needed to help you. Pardon me. Thanks. No, we can't hear you.
Sorry, Jenny. What is the question? Sorry, I drifted off. You don't go.
No problem. Just continuing to unpack men and masculinities within the session, if you had any reflection on that in particular. Or anyone else, no? Sabir, I just heard you unmute. I don't know if anyone has any questions either. And we have some slides, no, to recap a little bit what we did as MenEngage and some of the ways that men and masculinities were addressed. Kisa, over
I
to
think,
you.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so in that case, I would say something about the statement that was made by the Secretary General around whether I know MenEngage, we were curious whether the Secretary General could expand the language around men and masculinities and how men and boys can be involved in the advancement of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. So that was something that we were curious about, and we were hoping to raise it on the floor, but we were not able to get the opportunity to do that. But generally, we, in the work that we did as delegates, was to expand language and to seek the inclusion of men and masculinities in the areas that we felt were lacking. The thing that also stood out for me was the fact that as an alliance, we have made a name for ourselves in terms of working alongside women's rights organizations and feminist organizations and young people and LGBTQ rights. So it means that we are a trusted voice in terms of involving men and boys, so which was something that really stood out for me. Sometimes when you're in the space, you don't really think of the impact that you have or the reach that you have, but listening to other people speak and share about that and share about our work, that was something that was very encouraging. So that's my reflection on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. maybe I'm thinking, let's go back to the slides and also acknowledging your contribution in the chat, Doug, which I align with. No, I think overall, men and masculinities were definitely considered an important topic of discussion when we're reflecting on 30 years since the Declaration was adopted. It was part of the political declaration. But yeah, we're continuing to see a little stagnation on the political and nuanced understanding of men and masculinities within broader discussions on gender justice. No, there's still a lot of room to unpack, not just how men and boys as individuals are agents of change and allies to gender justice, but how we must transform patriarchal masculinities, ideologies, systems, structures, and what's the role of men and boys towards that, no? So there's still quite a lot of room, although definitely it was a topic of discussion at the session. We had 50 members travel to New York, as we mentioned, and we were active in putting forward our collective opinions, our collective analysis, and political agendas within CSW. All of this work happens before the session, no? And we did submit a written statement, which is part of the official deliberations. We also had an oral statement, which Kisa was sharing. He delivered on behalf of the Alliance. This happens in the middle of an official plenary where we're able to share our voice, our politics as CSOs within CSW. We also shared a collective position on CSW revitalization because MenEngage has been participating in CSW for over a decade, no? So we have quite a lot of valuable inputs on how we want to see that space shifted across the negotiation process. And we had over 22 members that we connected with to lobby on the political declaration, and 3 members on the national delegations, which Doug was one of, as we had mentioned. Next slide. And so we did organize some parallel and side events. This is one of the main functions that we have as MenEngage Alliance when we go to CSW, is mapping all of the events that our members are participating in, organizing, where they're bringing forward a men and masculinities lens. We're just finishing up a report, so we're going to share that with all of you that have registered for this call, where you can get a deeper insight into everything that was organized by our members, some of what emerged from those conversations. So it's also an important contribution that we make as an alliance to centering this political topic within CSW in an accountable way, no? Meaning working alongside feminists and LGBTIQ and youth and climate justice partners, and contributing a men and masculinities lens in a way that's adding value to broader discussions about the context and the political moment that we're in, and how engaging men and boys and transforming masculinities can contribute to the achievement of gender, climate, and social justice. No? Next slide. And we always organize a caucus meeting, if not several. These are spaces where MenEngage members come together, and we continue to strategize, no, live as the session is taking place about our participation, anything that is emerging that we want to respond to. And this year, interestingly, we decided as part of our caucus meeting to try to deliver a question directly to the UN Secretary General in a town hall that he holds with civil society, because we wanted to ask a follow-up question based upon a report that he produces annually in preparation for CSW, where, as Kisa was sharing, he mentioned the importance of organizations. He called them pro-feminist organizations working to advance gender justice, that work on transforming patriarchal masculinities and engaging men and boys towards the achievement of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. So this was a very important moment where the UN Secretary General really called on organizations such as those within MenEngage that are doing this work, and how critical it is when done well and accountably and through a feminist political lens. So we decided within this space to organize and try to ask that question, although we weren't selected, no, but we're going to seek to follow up with the UN Secretary General. And then, of course, members on delegations is key because you have, depending on your country's delegation, when you are on the national delegation, that means you're a civil society expert that's been invited to share your inputs, insights, and expertise with your government delegation at CSW. So it can mean quite a bit of access. Sometimes it doesn't, and it's a very performative and tokenistic role. So it really depends on your government. But to that point, way ahead of CSW, let's say now in preparation for the session next March, even in the next few months, beginning to reach out to your ministries of gender, your ministries of foreign affairs, different ministries that may be coordinating your government's participation at CSW, even United Nations agencies like UN Women. You can begin to inquire on the process of being part of the CSO delegation for CSW and how you might put forward your name as an organizational representative to be part of that. Next slide. And I'll be very quick with this since we're coming to time. So the political declaration did have some language on engaging men and boys. That was good to see. And I think what we can assess is progress. There was only one paragraph on men and boys. That's okay. That's what we advocated for. Again, it's a short document, so we're not trying to have men and boys be included 20 times when we can't even have SRHR and the defense of women human rights defenders and LGBTIQ rights included. Our aim is not to have the document full of references to engaging men and boys. One paragraph that's political and nuanced is a win. And that's standard across the last several political declarations. One paragraph that begins to address how we need to engage men and boys in achieving the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And this one was a little bit more nuanced than past years, specifically because it concretely called on governments to design and implement national policies and programs to fully engage men and boys in efforts to achieve the accelerated and full implementation of the declaration. And also that it needed to address the root causes of gender inequality, such as negative social norms, gender stereotypes, and eliminating all forms of violence and discrimination against women and girls. So again, what comes out of CSW is not like a treaty. It's not like a convention and treaty are interchangeable terms. These are binding agreements that if your country ratifies, they must be implemented within national law. Resolutions at CSW are guidance in a way, which means they're non-binding. It's a recommendation to your government. However, the outcomes of CSW can be used in our ongoing advocacy. So feel free to take the political declaration and the language that was adopted on men and masculinities to advocate with your government for the development, of policies and programs to engage men and boys. We're happy to support with follow-up advocacy, but it is closing the loop on CSW, is that now we had an international agreement. How do we utilize that now to carry out our national advocacy, to push our governments to implement these recommendations? Next slide. And go ahead to the next one. I was just recapping here how that is stronger language than the Beijing plus 25 declaration and the Beijing plus 20. However, we advocate for a lot more progressive language that doesn't make it in. We've continued to see a barrier to the inclusion of the documents, the outcome documents, naming the need to transform patriarchal masculinities, ideologies, systems. It continues to want to address engaging men and boys as individuals without recognizing the systemic roots of inequality. And this is something we've been advocating for many years, and it's been very hard to get it into the normative framework as adopted language. And also the links between patriarchal masculinities and LGBTIQ violence, and the maintenance of the gender binary. These things are too progressive as of yet to make it in. and explicit references to online and offline misogyny, how that's linked to impunity due to the entitlement, of patriarchal power, and also on the role of men in positions of power to be actors, and agents of change themselves in supporting systems transformation. And accountability. We always advocate for a recognition of the need for accountability in all work that engages men and boys in gender justice. Next slide. And I'll pause there. I think I'm going to share this now with you in the chat. We're already at time. So if you would like to stay maybe 5 more minutes, just a quick open question. If anyone has any questions that they would like to share, and also any feedback, on how we can better mobilize, organize, and engage in CSW next year, that would be really welcome. This year's mobilization already integrated a lot of excellent recommendations that came out from the CSW debrief the year before. So we're always looking to be better at organizing as MenEngage. So just a few minutes too for any feedback. This was the joint position that we developed on CSW revitalization. I'm sharing it on the Slack so you can take a look on what we recommended, in terms of how we want to see CSW be strengthened. And any thoughts? Let me just check the chat. And seeing some colleagues are dropping off. Any questions before we wrap up, or any feedback on our organizing, mobilizing, and being better? Even if you weren't at CSW, if you felt like you didn't receive enough information about our activities or how to engage from afar, any inputs on that would be also welcome, no?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hello.
Hi, I'm Masood from Bangladesh. I think it's an excellent learning session for us, those who didn't participate in the process. And what I take from here is that, this narrative and these commitments that you are showing on the paper, maybe once we go through that, if we have a reflection session later on at some down the line, we can better understand the context and some of the concerns that we are seeing around globally, which may shape or reshape the agenda for the next CSW session. So I would just like to thank that this is quite important, and it has been a very rich, a session with a lot of information, deliberation, and analysis. So just a big thanks for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And we're always open to schedule any advocacy sessions with members. If we think we may need like a session to really unpack how to utilize the outcomes of CSW for our national advocacy, I think that would be really strategic and interesting and something that we've always integrated into our conversations at the end, but not had a full session about how we can utilize what happens within international policy making to put pressure on our government. So I'd be really open for that. Thank you for that contribution. Mark, how about you?
Can you hear me now? So great, thank you. Thank you very much, Jenny, and all the others, not only for this session, which is like really brilliant, but also for organizing everything at CSW for the MenEngage session. That was really great to be there and to have all the information you prepared already in advance. So this is really good. The only thing I wanted to add, I mean, a couple of minutes ago, I couldn't add because I couldn't unmute myself, but I just put in the chat, I hope you received it, one of a couple of papers on what Doug mentioned about protective masculinity. Our colleague Kasia Wojnicka in Gothenburg is is very much pushing this theorem of protective masculinity as kind of like an anti-feminist or traditionalizing in masculinities. And I think this is really relevant for what's happening today. So that was one thing. And the other thing is when talking about the what you just mentioned, Jenny, the language that couldn't make it into the document about men, boys, masculinities, patriarchy. I would even add a couple of more things, and at some point we should really discuss how to act about it to bring this position more in. I appreciate very much that a perspective on boys and men were already quite visible, and a lot of events happened around boys, men, and masculinities. But I think we should push even a bit harder to direct interventions in the perspective of men and boys, perpetrators' work, for example, peer counseling at schools, and peer interventions at schools or social services, education of boys at workplace, gender equality at workplaces, and men's role there, allyship, or men as agents of change. We need a lot more, I think, and I think this is highly relevant. At some point, I would be glad to be part of a session that maybe at the end of this year tries to direct a little bit more or to intensify what kind of good practice projects were in all around the world. And I think MenEngage is very much, MenEngage members are very much committed to projects that are really, that could serve as good practices here. And I think this would be really great to get a session to be right on time before the next CSW to bring this more on the agenda. But first of all, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. That sounds like another great suggestion. And I'm thinking we have the collab, no, as part of our work as MenEngage, and that seems like it would be a very interesting session. So I'm going to share that feedback with our colleague Bianca, who's leading that, and see if we can maybe do something to pull a session together, no, or several. So thanks so much for that, Mark. Anyone else have any questions or comments? And I would just say in closing, for those who don't participate in negotiations of United Nations, sessions or conferences, it's very, very difficult to progress language, no? And sometimes you are working for a decade to get one term included. And it can be quite frustrating when you don't know much about the process because you think, well, we want to include XYZ, but every single term is debated, negotiated. Strategies are mounted for the inclusion of a single term or the exclusion of a single term, no? I mean, strategies are built around just one being in or out. So it's quite difficult. And we've seen, just as a quick recap, and actually I'll share, we're looking to develop a policy agenda to succinctly communicate to our allied governments how we want the normative framework to progress. The normative framework is adopted language in UN resolutions, no? That's the technical term. To see if we can start pushing the needle on a few points that have been stagnating, no? But one trend that we see is that sometimes language on men and boys can be co-opted towards that paternalistic framing. So we have to be really careful. And we see engaging men and boys sometimes included so much without it being a political inclusion. It's not adding value other than a recognition that men and boys are part of the solution, right? sometimes it's recognize them as part of the problem, but it's not really deepening an understanding of how men and boys have multiple roles to play, what those roles are, and also the movement to, as we were mentioning, more of the shift of systems, no? Masculinity norms, not just as men and boys exhibit them, but as they're found in institutions and structures and systems, no? Great. Well, we're about 11 minutes over. We have some recommendations for next steps, which we really appreciate. I'm going to send an email to everyone that registered, everyone here, but also everyone that registered that was not able to attend. And we'll also open up a space there for any feedback that we can incorporate, no, as we continue to mobilize and strategize. And just to let you know, if you have never been to CSW and are interested in engaging next year, then we will begin the process of preparing together, as I mentioned, even in the next 3-4 months, beginning to unpack the priority theme for next year. Access to justice, as we mentioned, and what does that mean from a men and masculinities lens? We usually do that by hosting strategy calls with that are open to all Alliance members. And then we share information about how you can begin the process of participating, which always happens at national level. Your government will hold some sort of a consultation about the CSW theme. Then there's a regional consultation where the region develops a collective positioning. And then there's CSW that happens in New York. And as we've shared before, the point of influence is early. By the time we get to New York, it's very hard to affect change in the negotiations. So do look out for us beginning to convene to prepare for next year, because the earlier that you participate, the more likely we can have an impact. Thank you so much for joining today, and thank you so much to all colleagues who spoke and shared your insights and analysis. We could host multiple sessions to unpack everything that happened at CSW. It's such an important and rich base, but hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight. And we'll follow up with that email with all the resources shared today. I'll add the one you shared, Mark. Thanks so much for that. And then we'll continue to be in touch. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for facilitating the space. Thank you, everyone. It was very useful. Bye.
Thanks, Mapiwa, for joining with tech issues. Much appreciated.
No, it's been a struggle today. I don't know. I think there's a power outage and it's affecting my internet connection.
Of course. No, thanks. No, thanks for joining with all of that and for your analysis as always. Super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Coram, thank you so much.
No, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Rashid. Bye, Sabir.